Buenas noches, everyone. This public hearing by the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard is hereby called to order. Today is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, and the time is now 10:13 a.m. For the record, and in accordance with the open government law, notices for this hearing were sent on February 19th, 2025, and again on February 24th, 2025. This hearing was also published on the Guam Legislature website and the Guam Public Notice website. Joining me here this morning are committee members and our Vice Speaker, Tony Atta, as well as my colleagues, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Shelley Calvo, Senator William Parkinson, Senator Therese Terlahi, and Senator Chris Barnett. Sejus Masi, colleagues, for joining me this morning. Before we proceed with this discussion, I'd first like to provide some general rules of conduct for those that are in attendance today. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Written comments or presentations shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written comments for photocopying. Comments may be read, and lengthy presentations should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Those offering comments will be allowed to present written or oral testimony. Once you are done, please remain in the room for questions or additional comments as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and comments shall be confined to the nature of the agenda. Today's public hearing agenda covers Bill number 27-38 by Senator William A. Parkinson, which is an act to amend 60102 and 60103 of Chapter 60, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to removing the restrictions on ownership of suppressors and silencers, and to be known as the Hearing Protection Act of 2025. The chair will invite individuals who wish to testify on Bill 27-38, COR. Before speaking, individuals who wish to make a presentation shall first be recognized by the chair and shall state their names for record purposes. The order of questioning will begin with a panel of senators who shall complete their lines of questioning on Bill 27-38 COR. Personal inferences about the character or motive of any senator or any individual commenting is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room for this particular proceeding. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form or decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted and removed from the room. Proper form, decorum shall be practiced by all present here in the public hearing room. At the request of the American Suppressor Association, the committee will first receive testimony from the organization via Zoom after the bill's sponsors' opening remarks, and we will begin testimony from Mr. Knox Williams, the President and Executive Director of the American Suppressor Association, followed by questions from senators. Senator Parkinson, please proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, esteemed colleagues and advocates of our constitutional liberties. Thank you for being here. Bill 27-38, also known as the Hearing Protection Act of 2025, is a legislative initiative designed to harmonize the preservation of public health with a commitment to our Second Amendment rights. This bill proposes the legalization and regulations of firearm suppressors in Guam, aiming to protect the auditory health of firearm users and mitigate noise pollution within our communities. I want to first thank Vice Speaker Tony Atta, who first advocated for this bill several legislatures ago. And I look forward to working together to make sure this important bill makes it to law this time. So thank you again, Vice Speaker Atta, for your consistent Second Amendment leadership. Firearm enthusiasts, law enforcement personnel, and military service members are routinely exposed to hazardous noise levels during shooting activities. The discharge of firearms typically exceeds 140 decibels, with some firearms reaching up to 175 decibels. To contextualize, exposure to noise above 140 decibels can cause immediate and irreversible hearing damage. Suppressors, functioning analogously to automotive mufflers, can reduce the noise of a gunshot by an average of 20 to 35 decibels, thereby significantly reducing the risk of noise-induced hearing loss. Despite the well-documented risk, studies reveal that a substantial number of firearm users neglect traditional hearing protection. Research indicates that between 70 to 80% of hunters and nearly 50% of target shooters do not consistently utilize earplugs or earmuffs. Consequently, for every 5 years of hunting, individuals become 7% more likely to experience high-frequency hearing loss. The integration of suppressors offers a solution, enabling users to protect their hearing without compromising situational awareness, a critical factor in both recreational and defensive shooting scenarios. The adoption of suppressors also fosters harmonious community relations. Unmitigated firearm noise can disrupt residential areas, leading to tensions between shooting facilities and their neighbors. We have had an instance here on Guam where a licensed and legally operated shooting range has been shut down by the government due to noise complaints from nearby neighbors, causing great financial stress to a local business owner trying to make an honest living. By reducing the sound signature of gunfire, suppressors help minimize noise complaints, allowing shooting ranges to potentially operate responsibly and coexist peacefully with surrounding communities. A common misconception is that suppressors render firearms silent, potentially facilitating criminal activity. However, empirical evidence contradicts this notion. Data from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives indicate that over 1.3 million suppressors registered in the United States. Among them, they are rarely used in crimes. The ATF reports an average of only 44 suppressor-related prosecutions annually, constituting approximately 0.003% of all registered suppressors. This statistic shows that suppressors are predominantly utilized by law-abiding citizens for legitimate purposes, such as hearing reduction and noise reduction. Furthermore, the legal acquisition of suppressors involves stringent federal regulation under the National Firearms Act of 1934. Prospective owners must undergo extensive background checks, registration, pay a tax, ensuring that only responsible individuals obtain these devices. The Hearing Protection Act of 2025 seeks to align Guam's laws with these federal standards, streamlining the process for law-abiding citizens while maintaining oversight to prevent misuse. The current regulatory framework under the NFA imposes substantial administrative burdens, resulting in processing times of approximately 8 months for suppressor applications. By aligning Guam legislation with federal standards and potentially streamlining the application process, we can reduce bureaucratic delays, facilitating timely access for responsible firearm owners. Hearing loss not only diminishes the quality of life, but also imposes significant economic burdens due to medical treatments and loss of productivity. Preventative measures such as the adoption of suppressors can mitigate these costs, benefiting both the individual and the broader healthcare system. The Second Amendment of the United States guarantees the right of individuals to keep and bear arms. This fundamental liberty encompasses not only the possession of firearms, but also the ability to use them safely and effectively. Suppressors serve as a safety accessory that enhance the shooting experience by reducing recoil and reducing noise. They're improving the accuracy and preserving hearing. The regulation should be considered within the broader context of the Second Amendment. Let's not infringe upon the constitutional rights of firearm owners. It is also pertinent to acknowledge that suppressors can be particularly beneficial for individuals who rely on firearms for personal protection, including survivors of domestic violence. Research indicates that many women turn to firearms for self-defense, and the use of suppressors allows them to train effectively without risking hearing damage. This underscores the role of suppressors in empowering vulnerable groups to exercise their rights safely. In summation, the Hearing Protection Act of 2025 represents a balanced and judicious approach to firearm regulation, one that safeguards public health, upholds constitutional rights, and promotes community well-being. By legalizing and regulating suppressors in Guam, we provide our citizens with the means to protect their hearing, enhance shooting safety, and reduce noise pollution, all while maintaining stringent oversight to prevent misuse. I implore my esteemed colleagues and fellow citizens to support this legislation, recognizing that the true silencer is the silence that accompanies hearing loss, a preventable condition that we have the responsibility to address through informed and compassionate policy making. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. At this time, I also would like to welcome my colleague, Senator Jesse Lujan, for being with us this morning. Thank you, Senator, for joining us for this public hearing on Bill 27-38. So before proceeding with testimony from Mr. Knox Williams, consistent with the guidelines that are established by the Guam legislature for testimonies offered via Zoom, these individuals and others wishing to testify on Bill 27-38 COR are asked to state their name for the record, the name of their organization or agency if their testimony is provided on behalf of the entity, and whether they support or oppose Bill 27-38 COR. So at this time, I'd like to hear, if we can, from Mr. Knox Williams via Zoom. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Chairperson Gumataotao, Vice Chair Ada, Senator Parkinson, honorable members of the committee. I'd like to start by thanking you all very much for your time. My name is Knox Williams, and I'm the President and Executive Director of the American Suppressor Association. In addition to some written testimony that we've submitted to the committee, I'm testifying today to offer our organization's full support of Senator Parkinson's legislation to legalize suppressor ownership in Guam. Within the United States, suppressors are currently legal to own in 42 states and are legal to hunt with in 41. It is critical to note that no device can silence the noise of a gunshot. Physics simply will not allow it. However, suppressors absolutely reduce the dangerously loud noise levels produced by a gunshot to safer sound levels. That's why the Centers for Disease Control, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, the National Hearing Conservation Association, and the Academy of Doctors of Audiology all recommend the use of suppressors as a tool to mitigate preventable hearing damage. According to the CDC, and this is a direct quote, The only potentially effective noise control method to reduce students' or instructors' noise exposure from gunfire is through the use of noise suppressors that can be attached to the end of the gun barrel. According to NIOSH, again, a direct quote, if feasible and legally permissible, attach noise suppressors to firearms to reduce peak sound pressure levels. According to the National Hearing Conservation Association, and I quote, although firearm suppressors do not completely eliminate the risk of noise-induced hearing loss from firearms noise, the risk can be significantly reduced. Therefore, the National Hearing Conservation Association supports the use of firearm noise suppressors as a form of an engineering noise control to reduce hazardous firearm noise exposures. The Academy of Doctors of Audiology echoes this statement in their endorsement of Senator Parkinson's legislation by stating, the Hearing Protection Act of 2025 will open up access to important hearing protection for the law-abiding citizens of Guam. While the use of conventional hearing protection tools such as earplugs and earmuffs are fundamental for preventing noise-induced hearing loss in firearms users, conventional hearing protection alone does not always offer adequate protection from noise exposure. Firearm noise suppressors can be an effective supplement to traditional hearing protection. At the end of the day, this is a matter of public health and safety, and it is in fact a bipartisan issue. In 2021, similar legislation led by Vice Chair Ada passed this legislature by a 7-6 margin only to be vetoed by Governor Guerrero. In a similar set of circumstances, Democratic Governor of Montana, Steve Bullock, held the common misconception that suppressors could silence a firearm. This led him to veto suppressor hunting legislation the first time it crossed his desk in 2013. However, during the next session, once he became properly educated on the issue, he actually reversed course, and not only did he sign the legislation, he urged the Montana legislature to legalize their use in the field. In a letter to then Speaker of the House in March of 2015, he wrote, and I quote, the public perception of suppressors as the same thing as silencers, where the assassin quietly dispatches his victim, no longer holds true. Suppressors mitigate the sound of a shot but do not silence it. The use of suppressors for hunting, when hunters cannot wear ear protection because they need to be aware of their surroundings, can help protect against hearing loss. This is especially true for our younger hunters, even those who are not actually hunting but are accompanying their parent in the field. I understand the concerns regarding the risks of increased poaching and do not take this lightly, but other states have not found this to be the case. And that rings true even today, 10 years later. Governor Bullock's change of opinion wasn't ideological, it was educational. Unlike many firearms issues, pro-suppressor reform has received a tremendous amount of bipartisan support across the country, and Guam is proving to be no exception. Senator Parkinson, the chief sponsor of this legislation, is a Democrat. In fact, 4 Democratic governors have recently signed pro-suppressor legislation into law, including Governor Stephen Bullock in Montana, Governor Peter Shumlin in Vermont, Governor Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire, and most recently Governor Janet Mills in Maine, where a suppressor hunting bill was passed unanimously by the Maine legislature. Again, that's because this truly is a matter of public health and safety. For these reasons and many more, the American Suppressor Associations ask you all to support Senator Parkinson's Hearing Protection Act to legalize suppressors in Guam. Should any legislators want to learn more about suppressors, we would be more than happy to host an educational demonstration at any time of your choosing. However, unfortunately, until this legislation passes and it becomes law, it would have to be on the mainland. Thank you all very much for your time, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Adam Mellenbacher for his testimony. Good evening and good morning from Guam, sir.
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me the honor of being able to testify in front of you. I'm an audiologist, and the majority of my patients have noise-induced hearing loss. I perform research on blast injury and head trauma at Duke University. I'm a member of the board of the American Suppressor Association Foundation. Before all of this, I was a soldier, and I deployed to Ground Zero on 9/11 to Bosnia and Iraq. So I have intimate knowledge of harmful noise, hearing loss, and tinnitus on many levels. Some of the consequences of hearing loss are difficulty understanding speech, the increased risk of dementia, difficulty getting employment or loss of earning potential, and difficulty in school. One of the most serious threats to hearing comes from recreational shooting. This is completely preventable. Suppressors are one of the most effective tools available to reduce the noise of a gunshot to a less dangerous level. Hearing protection is rarely worn to a manufacturer's specification. For example, the foam earplugs that I think everybody is familiar with, the manufacturer recommends that the outer surface is flush with the ear canal. The majority of people don't wear them that way. Earmuffs in a place with high humidity like Guam can be like mini saunas. Not only can they become uncomfortable, but they can shift on the head, reducing their effectiveness. The exposure to one unsuppressed gunshot with a device out of place can cause permanent damage and tinnitus. Earplugs and earmuffs on their own are not sufficient. Using hearing protection with suppressors can reduce the risk of noise-induced hearing loss more than either device alone. The Association of Doctors of Audiology, the CDC, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, the National Hearing Conservation Association all support the use of suppressors to reduce harmful exposure to noise. I did an internet search before I came on here for audiologists in Guam, and I found that there was 3 that hold an active license. In searching for practices, I really only found 1. And from what I found, that audiologist seemed really impressive. It looks like she sees everything from infants that don't pass infant hearing screenings at the hospital when they're born to my fellow veterans. It seems she's so busy that she has to limit how many veterans she can see per month. This may sound bad for my colleague's business, but I'd like to reduce the amount of patients that she's getting from noise-induced hearing loss. And one way of doing that is this preventable noise that can damage hearing. I'd like to thank you for letting me speak today, and I hope Guam can continue to communicate with their loved ones without hearing loss if they allow them to reduce their exposure to noise by using suppressors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mellenbacher. Again, thank you, Mr. Williams and Dr. Mellenbacher. I now will ask if any of my colleagues have any questions specifically for these 2 individuals who have joined us via Zoom. If I can, I'd like to begin with our bill's author, Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I just prefer to listen to testimony and questions, and I'll save my comments for the close.
Thank you so much. I'd like to move on to my member of my committee and the Vice Speaker of the Guam Legislature, Tony Atta. Senator Tony Atta?
I don't have any questions for the gentleman that has just spoken, perhaps later in the testimony. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Can I ask Chris Winyas? Senator, do you have any questions for the men on Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I enjoyed their testimony and their facts that they put out. I also am going to listen at this point, and perhaps after other testimonies or questions, I may have a follow-up. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Therese Terrell, do you have any questions for the gentleman on Zoom?
I just wanted to clarify if any of them is registered with the Guam Legislature as a lobbyist, or if they are receiving compensation as part of their duties to submit this testimony.
I'll take that question. Again, Knox Williams with the American Suppressor Association. We're in the process of registering as a lobbyist within Guam. However, appearing on this Zoom hearing to provide testimony, we don't believe triggers the threshold, and this is the extent of our contact to this point.
I can say I don't receive any compensation for what I do. I'm here purely as an expert witness, not as a lobbyist.
Thank you. Doctor, the audiologist, can I just confirm, did you say that you were a member of the ASA also?
I'm on the board of the ASA Foundation.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. Senator Chris Barnett, do you have any questions for the gentleman on Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I just had just one question for the hearing doctor. In the bill's intent, maybe just for clarification, It says here the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health says noise levels above 85 decibels can lead to permanent hearing loss after repeated or prolonged exposure, and firearm discharges commonly exceed 140 dB. Published research indicates that the use of firearm suppressors can reduce the noise of a firearm discharge by an average of 20 to 35 decibels, therefore significantly mitigating the risk of noise-induced hearing loss. I just would ask, so if noise levels above 85 decibels can lead to permanent hearing loss and firearm discharges are commonly exceed 140 dB, the reduction of 20 to 35 decibels still puts the, I guess, loudness, for lack of a better term, above the levels that cause permanent hearing loss. So I guess my question, because I'm don't have a lot of information about this, how significant then is that protection if the use of the suppressor still leaves the firearm at a level that can lead to permanent hearing loss?
Yes. So OSHA states that a noise level above 85 decibels can be harmful, and that's for more of a steady state noise, like you think industrial machines or in a factory kind of situation. Impulse noises like a gunshot or an explosion or something that is more short duration, the OSHA threshold is 140 decibels. So it's two different types of noise exposure. And they have different thresholds for time that you can be safe in an environment. So something like 90 decibels, it might drop down to, you can have 6 hours of exposure before you're at risk for permanent hearing damage. But for an impulse noise like a firearm, the OSHA standard, they determined 140 decibels is significant and could potentially cause hearing damage. So if you're looking at a firearm that may have a unsuppressed level of 170 and you reduce it down to by 20 to 30 decibels, that might get you closer to the 140.
Okay, so is your medical advice then for individuals who would be using suppressors to also use the earmuffs or the earplugs?
Yes, it's essentially a second level of safety. It's always better to control noise at its source, but to be extra safe, you would want to have both. It's kind of like if you're riding in your automobile, you would wear your seatbelt even though you also have an airbag.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Tudos mas, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Shelley Calvo, do you have any questions for the gentleman on Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy day and buenas. No further questions from me, but I just wanted to thank the two gentlemen who called in for their statements and their testimonies. Tudos mas.
Thank you, Senator Calvo. Senator Jesse Lujan, do you have any questions for our panelists on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions for the panel on Zoom this morning.
All right, thank you so much. And again, Mr. Williams, Dr. Mellenbacher, thank you for your input on this, and I'm hoping you'll be able to monitor the rest of the hearing here in Guam. And again, good evening to you as well. We're now going to proceed to others who signed in to testify on Bill 27-38 COR. I'm going to ask them to, take a seat in the front here. I think we should have room. John Gary Hickenbottom, can you please come forward if you're going to be providing testimony? Thank you, sir. Mikey You, please come on up. Joseph Arola, are you here? Please join us in the front here. Frank Lai, are you going to be testifying? No? Also, is Stephen Amuan here? I know he's over there. Thank you for coming, Stephen. Please have a seat. And, okay, I think that's it. And anyone else want to testify this morning? All right, I'll go ahead and I'll begin with Mr. Hickenbottom. Thank you, and you have the floor, sir.
I'd like to, well, my name's John Gary Hickenbottom. I'm disabled veteran, U.S. Navy, 100%. I've been around firearms all my life. I'm an avid collector, shooter. I've done that in the military, and up until today, I have considerable hearing loss from my military time. Even though I used all the required Navy ear protections and earplugs and everything, it's still gotten to me. I am a strong supporter of Senator Parkinson and Senator Ada. I want to thank you for trying to push this through. This is part of our right as veterans and American citizens under the Second Amendment to be able to have the safety measures in place. Now, I am also, because I didn't have time to get it in writing, a strong supporter of the range that Senator Parkinson mentioned. I'm a life member of that range and have been involved with John Sublime for over 20 years, shooting with him and around his place. He was wrongfully destroyed by a simple little unsubstantiated hearing losses, hearing complaints. I happened to be there when they came in that day and served notice at the range. And they never knew proof. It was all verbal. So I'll just leave it there. He was wrong. He's a veteran. He is a fire department captain. He is a firearms expert. And his family, local Chamorro family, was destroyed their livelihood. That was their family's livelihood. For his children, they were part of this. So I would like to support it because it is a safety issue. People go hunting on this island. They hunt pigs, right? 12-gauge shotgun. Shotguns are loud. When the shotgun goes off in the jungle, people hear it. They get scared. Why? If we were hunting with suppressors, that whole issue would never come up at the range. I'm a member. I started out as a member of their Empire group here a couple years ago, and I only attended one match because of what had happened. But when you get 10, 15 shooters on the line with 22 caliber rifles shooting, right? It's loud. But if you go outside the barricades, you can't really hear it. If you had suppressors, you wouldn't hear it at all. And there wouldn't be any basis for any complaints about hearing, the fear of people hearing firearms. It really needs to be addressed as a safety issue. It is a safety issue for me. My hearing's not going to come back. I have to protect it. I wear super protection every time I shoot, but I can't shoot anyone. There isn't anywhere on this island I legally shoot, and I'm not going to go up in the jungle and shoot. You've driven all the shooters that were using that range away from the only safe, efficient, well-regulated, range on this island. And now where are they? They're up in the hills. That's dangerous for everybody on this island. So I strongly support Senator Ada, Senator Parkinson, whatever I can do. John Sublime's busy right now to try to get here today. He's fighting his battles right now, but we need to do this. It's a big cost. It's $200. You have to go through the, NFA. But there's always, I don't know, why couldn't you add a little tax here when you just we are one of the most well-regulated firearms places on the United States. I'm a collector. You have to go down and register your weapon, inspect your weapon. You pay your $49, right? Your handling fees. Everything's recorded, documented. Everything on this island is safe. I don't see people running around like crazy, but I've heard rumors of that one range that recently opened. There's a lot of scary things going on. So I want to just leave it there. I don't go there. I won't go where it's not safe. John Sublime had a safe, monitored. He fought for years to get that through this government. Everybody here fought to get them. And they opened that up, and it was a fantastic organization. So that's what I'd like to say. If you have any questions, I will only answer. But I came here in 2025. I've been here 20 years. And I worked at a naval magazine as a manager of a contract out there until 2008. So I have 35 years federal government and contract working around explosives, firearms, and that's where my hearing went. So.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
sir. And thank you for your service to our country, Mr. Hickenbottom. Mr. Ulloa, please proceed if you can.
Oh, hi everybody, good morning. Initially, I wasn't expecting to testify or give any comments. I was just attending to give feedback to federal firearms attorney Alan Beck. He's a friend of mine. He's been interested in the suppressor bill that Mr. Parkinson has. I was just going to give him feedback on today's proceedings, but I think a big safety concern that everybody has is what they see on TV and in the movies, as far as Hollywood portrays, firearms and suppressors, I kind of can equate that to maybe like a lot of the fight scenes that you see. That's not how it is in real life. And I believe some of you guys know my expertise on in that area. But, it is, I've been to the range many times, both ranges, PD, and JTM. But, it is, the noise pollution factor, it is a large concern. And, if we can mitigate that, that'd be great. One thing that we do have on Guam is I know that the firearms process here is very stringent, very, very stringent. We do the background check, for the initial firearms ID application, and on top of that, every time you purchase a brand new firearm, you must go through additional background checks with the FBI and ATF. So it's not just like a one-time, all said and done kind of deal. Every time you make a purchase, you will get screened, and I believe I think it's like sometimes it's like up to 3 days. If you walk into any gun store to try to make a purchase, it takes them, like they hold the firearm for like up to 3 days before you can actually take it home. That's if you pass the background check. So yeah, and then plus we do have to renew, and our laws here are pretty tough already. They're very good, but I do support the suppressor bill that Mr. Parkinson has put forth.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ulloa. Mr. Arola, you're here to testify. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Hello, good morning. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Joseph Arola. I'm the son of the late Francisco Blas Arola from Milan Arod, a retired police officer who served honorably in the Department of Public Safety, now known as the Guam Police Department. So I have been with firearms ever since I was a young man. I'd like to thank Senator Gumataotao for extending the invitation. I thank you so much for that. And to address this body, and thank you for holding this hearing for Bill 27-38 COR, the Hearing Protection Act of 2025, sponsored by Senator Parkinson and co-sponsored by Senator Adams. I would like to start with this, the bang. When you fire ammunition from a firearm, the ammo generates hot pressurized gases that need a place to escape. As these turbulent gases exit the firearm, the dramatic change in pressure causes a loud blasting sound. A suppressor's job is to redirect these heated gases through a system of chambers and baffles to slow down, cool, and limit the pressure and noise emitted from a firearms barrel. And you notice I keep saying suppressors. There's no such thing as silencer. When used in action movies, as the gentleman earlier said, the bad guys are usually running around gunning down their targets, all while maintaining or remaining undetected due to the whisper-like sound levels of their evil guns. Okay, it's like that TV series Airwolf. You press a button and it goes on whisper mode. Okay? It doesn't work that way. While this makes for a great storytelling device, the real-world accuracy of how a suppressor actually performs is much different than its Hollywood portrayal. In reality, most civilian-accessible firearms emit sounds ranging, as the Senator Parkinson said earlier, between 140 up to 175 decibels. Suppressors only marginalize and suppress a gun blast, bring the levels down to around 120, 150 dB. A greater percentage of the time, the sound is still very obviously identifiable as a gunshot. And this is where most people think that suppressors will actually eliminate the sound of a gunshot, and you would not know if a firearm is being shot. Along with the sound of the action, there is an additional insuppressible noise that comes into play, but it has to do with the actual projectile itself. Since the use of a suppressor does not alter the performance or velocity of the bullet being fired, when the projectile breaks that sound barrier, you will hear what's commonly known as a sonic boom, which is also harmful to the ear. Or in this case, it's called a sonic crack. This audible confirmation of a high-velocity projectile breaking the sound barrier can reach upwards of additional 150 dB, a level that is capable of rupturing eardrums. Even if you're not an avid shooter or gun owner, it is easy to understand one simple fact. Exploding gunpowder is loud. It doesn't take an audiologist to understand that constant exposure to loud noises can lead to hearing loss. Hearing loss and tinnitus caused by overexposure to loud noises are two of the most common medical conditions for recreational shooters and hunters. In fact, some of the things I'm about to say here, it sounds like I'm just parroting what Senator Parkinson said and the two gentlemen. In fact, WebMD, my source, claims hearing loss is the third most common health problem in the United States. The use of a suppressor can reduce the deafening sound of gunfire for hunters and recreational shooters by 30, 40, sometimes up to 50 dB, depending on the quality of the suppressor. Okay? This is comparable to benefits of using an in or over-the-ear hearing protection. So why not just wear hearing protection all the time? Well, I definitely recommend using some form of hearing protection. Every shooting situation is different, and ear pro may not always be an option. For example, in a law enforcement shooting situation, an officer may not have time nor the desire to worry about protecting their hearing. Safety and survival of the officer and innocent bystanders is the key concern. Also, shooting in tight enclosed spaces, like in a potential home defense situation, can also lead to permanent hearing damage. The reverberations, such as this chamber, of a gunshot of surrounding walls and ceiling can amplify the blast, regardless of the firearm use. Also, hunters typically do not wear protection when traveling out in the field. For starters, a hunter needs to be able to clearly listen for the game they are after. They also need to have full situational awareness with the ability to clearly communicate with other companions. A research demonstrates the superiority of suppressors over traditional ear protection. As published by Matthew P. Branch, MD, he found all suppressors offer significantly greater noise reduction than ear-level protection. Noise reduction of ear-level protectors are unable to reduce the impulse pressure, as mentioned earlier, below 140 dB for certain common firearms. Modern muzzle level suppression is vastly superior to ear level protection and the only available form of suppression capable of making certain sporting arms safe for hearing. So there you have it. The bang of a firearm is not some fantastical thing that popular culture has ingrained in our minds to make movies seem more exciting. Instead, it is a very real thing with a clear scientific basis. The Hollywood narrative that suppressors are silent are nothing more than Hollywood dramatical effects, and it ignores the reality that it serves a genuine purpose in protecting the hearing of our law-abiding gun owners in exercising their Second Amendment rights. Incidentally, as the Senator Parkinson mentioned earlier, the use of these devices for unlawful purpose is virtually unheard of. There are millions of suppressors. I think if I have my numbers correct here, reported as of July 2024, 4.9 million suppressors, according to data provided by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Compared this previous reporting to updated total reflects an alarming surge in suppressor sales. In the first 6 months of 2024 alone, Americans purchased and registered a staggering 1.4 million suppressors. There's also been an increase in education and awareness of hearing loss caused by firearms. However, there have been increased efforts by anti-gun groups to regulate these devices even further. Some groups have even called for a complete and total ban of suppressors for firearms. The arguments in favor of bans and confiscations range from how suppressors make a firearm more deadly all the way to only murderers use them. But if they're so horrible and deadly, why isn't there a plethora of crimes to connect them with? Okay. And the fight against such ridiculous and unsubstantiated claims in recent years, and legislation and research have been introduced to try and deregulate the sale of suppressors altogether. The Bureau of Tobacco and Alcohol statistics shows that 4.9 million suppressors are registered in the United States. The ATF has confirmed that suppressors are rarely used in crimes despite their explosion in popularity. And I think this is one of the issue is suppressors will be used, I think, more to injure people, to hurt people, to kill people, because it's a suppressor. It just doesn't work that way. That's 4.9 million suppressors in the hands of law-abiding gun owners. Currently, suppressors are regulated by the Restrictive National Firearms Act, which also regulates machine guns. Okay. I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience. And I'm just going to move on here because most of these things that I'm about to say was already, incidentally, anti-gun activists and the ATF prefer to use the term silencer, which fits their narrative. There is no such thing as a silencer. No attachment can 100% completely eliminate the explosive noise from any firearm it can reduce. And I have a chart here, if you guys would like to see that, on the noise levels that will cause harms. Okay. And one last thing, if I can find it. It's quiet in here. I beg your patience. Okay. Okay, and here's a very interesting fact. I was up to about 3 o'clock this morning researching, and I had to double check before I bring it. Interestingly, in many European countries, suppressors on firearms are mandatory to make target shooting and hunting quieter and less disturbing to neighbors. Firearms in France, and I did the research, for example, are fined and penalized for firing guns without a suppressor to quiet the noise. I couldn't believe that when I first read it. But up to 3 o'clock this morning, all the same answers. Okay, so European countries make it mandatory to use firearm suppressors when hunting or shooting within their own property. Okay, and I would like to close with this. As you can see, the chart that'll damage your ear. By the way, there are only 8 states that do not permit the use of, in the continental United States and Hawaii, the use of suppressors, and that is Hawaii, California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Delaware. 42 states have, how shall we say, permissible use of suppressors. Oh, in the District of Columbia. In closing, I humbly and respectfully ask for your kind consideration to remove the barriers in accessing this equipment and for the hearing protection of Guam's hunters and sportsmen, law-abiding gun owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Areola. Now I'd like to turn the mic over to Mr. Lai. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Senators, my name is Frank Lai. I'm a U.S. citizen, just law-abiding citizens. So I'm here to representing, just like you guys, for the people's best interests, that we believe that the NFA of 1934, those grounds are absolutely outdated throughout all the expert testimonies and all the studies throughout the histories. That the hearing protections that we understand is that most of the common calibers that we use nowadays, whether it's rifle, is a 5.56 or 223 Remingtons. All we use is a 7.62 x 39, which is AK rounds. That's the most commonly rounds that we see here on Guam. They both generate about 155 to 175 decibels. When we put the suppressors on, as we know from the expert testimonies, they only reduce about 25 to 30. Now, when a projectile creates such energies, at 175, it will absolutely does a lot of damage to your ears. Now, when you reduce that by 25 to 30, it will significantly reduce that harmness. And I personally do have experience with those. And I could tell you, if you want, I believe some of the military personnel will be very happy to demonstrate that, that it will save a lot of, people's hearings. Additionally to that is that I believe that the suppressors also save life. Most of the situation arrives in middle of the night or early in the morning where our physical and mental state of mind is not all there. When an individual has to defend himself in these kind of cases, that to utilize the deadly force to protect themselves and their homes is that when that first shot was fired and there was no mitigations towards the sound, towards that energy, she will not be able to have a proper second follow shot to defend herself. I'm also a certified NRA instructor, so we are trained extensively for that. If you're not trained extensively, an expert in doing that, that second shot and that third shot becomes extremely important between you standing here today or not seeing your family today. And additionally, besides the sound, also the suppressors mitigates the flashes on that. So it not only disoriented your hearings, but it also disoriented your visions. That is why suppressor is extremely important. It saves lives. It is extremely beneficial to the people. Finally, I think economically, it also helps in some sense. Suppressors are not cheap. 5% GRT And additionally, I was formerly also a FFL. So in order for any individuals that want to sign up for a suppressors, you have to go through a Form 4. You got to pay your $200. And additionally, many of the local government do have additional fees on top of that. So I really think that with all those grounds, we should create a win-win-win situation for the people. And at the same time, take the best interest of the people for their lives and their children's, their futures. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lai. Moving now to Mr. Amuan, and you have the mic, and thank you for your service, and thank you as well for your service to the people of Guam. I'm sorry, proceed.
Half a day. My name is Stephen Amuan. I'm a former public servant, served our island Guam for 31 years. I served 3 branches of military service, and yes, I train with firearms, and right now I have tinnitus. And at no time that during my training with the military, I was told to wear protection, because in reality, when you go out there in the middle of the night and the listening post, I need my earrings. Can you imagine having to have hearing protection, right? Trying to be the listening post, you're not be able to listen. So all of this is pretty much about self-preservation, about how you be able to protect yourself, and not to mandate anybody to be in to abide with the law that they have. I know there's about 42 states that now allows suppressors, right? Or people knows it as silencers. And doesn't mean that Guam has to abide with it. If you guys review the law that we have here in Guam, we have a lot of protections. Guam is the only territory or U.S. soil that actually have a very stringent process of how to acquire a firearm. We need, not like compared to other states, that's why other states can just go in and pick up a firearm at a gun show. Guam is very strict, and we are blessed to have that. And please, by having these fire suppressors, I know it says silencers in the movie. You know, I understand that. It's a movie. But, you know, as a former police officer, I know how it is to be out there listening to guns, to firearms, to gunshots, right? Now I'm going to have the officers get familiarized with how the new firearm sound is going to be. It's going to be unsafe for our police officers. We're being so, you call this selfish, because we worry about our ears, but we don't worry about the safety of the people that protect this island, which is our police officers, okay? As a matter of fact, the National Firearms Act, NFA, regulates silencers because they were seen as potential threat to public safety, okay? I'm Filipino, and I look at that potential threat to public safety. I'm not gonna reiterate more. I think for me, it's common sense. It's a threat to my fellow officers, okay? And there's a process also. I'm not sure if you guys have corroborated with at the bottom of your law, the bill says that we have to be in compliance with the established federal law and all that, right? Did we get with the ATF exactly how you guys going to go about with the requirements with the federal law that you need to register for $200, and you have to go to a background check? And you guys, if I'm reviewing the law that we have, I mean, it was just you crossed out fire suppressors. But I'm not sure. I didn't have time because I was too busy with the Veteran Task Force. But I had time to take a look at the law that we have. That is there any provision by crossing out the allowing fire suppressors, the suppressors to be used in Guam? Is there a law that will prohibit or penalize the people from owning it without registering it with the ATF? Because you have to coordinate with the ATF and the Guam Police Department. The Guam Police Department have to establish a new process of registration. It's going to cost money. Can you imagine the Guam Police Department? Every police officer wants to use suppressors, $200 each, right? How much is that going to cost the government of Guam? You think the government of Guam will be able to afford that now? ARP money is running out. We're depending on the military buildup. Military buildup is going to be done in 6 years. Our tourism is hurting. We have to be realistic, okay? Tourism is hurting. How are we going to be able to afford all these expenditures to support what we want? We think that is be able to protect our ears. It's you. How are you going to be able to protect yourself? I've served 31 years in the military, and the only time that I was wearing a hearing protection was when I was riding the helicopters around Afghanistan, because it was loud. But when I'm underground, I never use hearing protection because my ears is very important, and my eyes. Having that form of hearing protection. Can you imagine if we have to go through Afghanistan and or to the war, and all of our opponents have the suppressors, right? It's going to be harder for us. At nighttime, we have to do is take a look at the flash to identify exactly where the round's coming from. But in that notion, though, again, we have laws that protect us. You guys are talking about noise protection. Noise pollution. That's why the firing range in the Deldo was closed down, because it was near a residential area. Yes, if they may have fire suppressors, but what happened, the rounds that goes off and lands into some of those residences. But there's a law that disallows people from firing firearms within the residential area. It's not because of the hearing, because of safety of our people. Okay? And there's also a law that prohibits people from firing with their weapons around school areas. There's also a law that disallows you guys from carrying a firearm to this Guam legislature. Okay, so Second Amendment rights. Second Amendment rights does not apply in this building for the protection of our lawmakers, protection about the public that testify, protection from the people that probably is opposing or get mad because I'm opposing it, right? But you know me, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. The bill, I was just here last week. There was a bill that you guys are trying to pass, $100,000, right? We all concerned about the family members of our law enforcement officers that's killed in the line of duty. $100,000 that you guys are going to pay the family members that was left behind by the officers that was killed in the line of duty, but turn around and introduce this bill that will kill them? Come on, guys, wake up. Smell the coffee. If you guys are going to pass this bill, I highly suggest that when this bill is passed, anybody that's killed, any police officer that's killed in the line of duty by the use of this suppressor should be awarded, the family should be awarded $1 million, and the money should come from this body. Because you guys are passing it. You guys are negating the fact that our guys out there, the men in blue, are out there protecting the public, protecting us. I've done that for 31 years. Most of my assignment was narcotics unit, narcotics investigation, and I know how it is to go into a house. Nowadays it's harder now because of the stand your ground law that was passed. It's harder now for police officers to even approach a house because of that law. Okay, my suggestion, if you guys decide to pass it, okay, take a look at the violations that they have under the federal law, because we're still a U.S. territory, right? Possession of unregistered suppressors is illegal under the federal law and punishable by 10 years in prison and $250,000 fine. Okay? To mere possession of silencer during the commission of a crime is punished under federal law by a minimum of sentence of 30 years in prison. A second offense is punishable by life imprisonment. So with this, right, I'm not sure if we have a provision in our law that will allow us to enforce illegal possession of suppressors. Because if it's not, guess what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? ATF, illegal possession of this suppressor, if you don't register it, it automatically becomes a federal case. I'm quite sure my former colleagues in the Guam Police Department is assigned to the ATF task force. Would be more than happy to take on this case and apply the federal law that our people is pretty much violating. So you just have to think. Yes, I know there's 42 states that allow it, but if you look at there's other states, Hawaii, just goes by. Other states that don't allow it. And some states, they don't even allow the usage of suppressors during hunting. A lot of people, a lot of colleagues here, a lot of fellow islanders love to go hunting. Okay? It's a safety issue. And I suggest if you guys decide to pass this bill into a law, just minimize it. I know there's going to be a lot of you guys are supporting it, but I'm sorry, but I'm opposing it. I'm a veteran of 3 branches of military service, the United States Marine Corps, deployed twice in Afghanistan, deployed twice with the Marines. I do, all we did is train, right? We don't use hearing protection during live fire training exercise because we have to train realistically. The reality of life, of going under fires, right? Because I can say because I've been through that. If you guys are going to decide to pass this bill, put a provision in that if any of my colleagues on the public safety gets killed because of this suppressor, $1 million be given to the family automatically coming off on the budget of this Guam legislature, and make it only for training purposes. Because you guys talk about training. You guys talk about when you guys fire your weapons, because you guys have the Second Amendment rights issues and all that, right? So have them just use it. Allow them to use it during training. Anything outside the training environment will be a violation, and make sure that we implement that. Make sure that we put that in our Guam Code Annotated Title 10, Chapter 60, under the firearms law, and put some form of punishment. Okay? I'm just going to close this. Okay? I know I'm getting so emotional about this, but guys, I am speaking of my experience as a law enforcement officer. We don't need this. Our officers don't need to deal with this. And can you imagine, we're blessed that the only active shooter incident that we have here, guess what? SDA. Can you imagine if you have an active shooter incident in the schools? We're going to have to train our students how to listen to actual firearms with the suppressors and firearms without suppressors. We have to hire or get an instrument to measure the decibel rate. So, oh yeah, this is good. Are we going to teach our students that? No. They know exactly, but it will be harder for police officers to respond. It will be based on this NFPA that I quoted. It's not safe for public officer, for law enforcement officers. So, if you all care about our hearing, but never mind the police officer that protect this island, then go ahead, pass the bill. But make sure $1 million are attached to the bill, be given to the family members that killed in the line of duty with the use of the suppressor. That's all I want to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Amuan. Appreciate it. Mr. Philip Diaz, are you wanting to come up and testify? Or are you here to listen? I mean, if you would like to, you can come up if you would like. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. You can press the button there. We can hear you. Thank you, sir. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Philip Diaz. I'm also a retired police officer for 27 years in the Guam
Thank you for your service, sir.
You're welcome. I'm also a 4-year veteran, non-war veteran, and I'm the opposite. I agree with the suppressor, for I am an NRA member, and also the fact that so far, I don't think any police officers have been killed by a suppressor. I don't have the facts, but so far. But what I want to speak about is, it's going to throw, everyone spoke about statistics here and everything, so it's up to you, senators, to decide. What I'm going to say is, the legislature way back then raised the drinking age, and they didn't listen to the public, the people, when we all voted against raising from 18 to 21. If you all know that, I'm one of them that voted for it, because if you can send our sons and daughters to war, why can't they have a drink? But the senators just went ahead and did it, even though the people objected to it being raised. Did that solve the traffic fatalities on Guam? Year after year, 2-digit numbers every year. Now we're at number 4 in 2025, we're in 4 traffic fatalities. When the Weber law was created, how many incidents after the Weber law? The Guam gun owners have shown that they are responsible people. When they passed the Weber law, how many incidents? I can count with one hand. 1. It's almost 20 years from the Weber law. And we, the legislature learned, the people of Guam learned, when you guys give a law, people of Guam listens to it and obey it. The only people who's going to shoot police officers with suppressor are criminals, not the law-abiding Guam owners. Guam is blessed, like my fellow officers stated. We were blessed by having the ID card, firearms ID card. That is the most strictest. We are way advanced during all the other states. That's why they have the active shooting back there in the States. I went to California. What do I have to do to get a firearms ID? They laughed at me. They didn't know what a firearms ID was. That was back in the 80s when I got out in the Marine Corps in 85. They didn't know what a firearms ID is. No one knows. Guam was way in advance, and we proved it. And we are strict in our firearms just by having a firearms ID. And that's all that's needed. All the Guam owners of Guam, law-abiding citizens, when the Weber law was passed, they all secured their firearms. I've only known one incident, and that was a hunter who was tired, who didn't secure his firearm. That's the only one I've known so far. So that's all I'm saying. You guys base yourself on the fact I'm an NRA member. I'm also a law enforcement. I'm for whatever the people, which is suppressors. My colleague was a war veteran, but you're talking about civilians who wants to home defense. They're not used to the sound of gun going off in an enclosed area. Have any of you shot a firearm in an enclosed area? I have with GPD. Just to be from a distance down the hallway, I didn't have, my ears rang real loud. So if the homeowner is going to defend himself with the castle doctrine without a suppressor, that first round is going to startle them, and if they miss it, it's going to freak them out because that loud ringing sound in their head. Because they're not trained, they're not military. They're not special forces, they're not Marines, they're not Army, which is the 2 basic grunts. I, for one, shot the M16 when I was in the Marine Corps. They had this weird-ass earplug. My ears rang like hell, and we were in an open area, open range. So imagine a homeowner, which the people who are for it, is for the family members. You don't want to startle them. You don't want to have that ringing sensation that's going to freak them out, because no one shoots indoors. Not that I know of, but it'll ring your ears. So that's all I got to say is that year after year after year, all the restrictions on firearms, we're good at obeying the laws. But you look at all the people and the drivers of this island. You guys post speed limits. You guys do traffic enforcement. The police even do the holiday DUI checkpoints. But still, come on. I guarantee you, it's going to be over 10 fatalities this year. But how many incidents after the Weber law? 1. And that's going on 20 years. That's how good the Guam owners are. And I support them because I am an NRA member. And that's all I'm going to say is if they are going to shoot and use it against the police, it's not going to be the law-abiding gun owners. It's going to be the criminals. How they get it? Well, then make it strict, like you did. Make the gun owners responsible. Make sure you secure it, like they did with their firearms. So yes, it's both. Half of me says support it, half of me says So you guys decide, and I hope you guys choose what's best for our island. And like I said, there's no restrictions on cars, but yet they still speed, they still kill people. It's an inanimate object, just like a firearm. You know, got 5.7 liter Hemi engines. You got 4 cylinders with a dual turbocharge. Wait, I didn't realize there's a dual turbocharge. You got NOS. There's no restrictions on vehicles, and our speed limit is 35. But yet every year there's fatalities on cars. But When it comes to firearms, oh, no, firearms this, firearms that. Senator Therese Talai even mentioned on the previous, when she was speaker, she goes, why does Guam have a separate firearms law and the ATF has a separate? Why don't we just follow the ATF, which is what they're trying to do here. Just follow the ATF. If you want it, you pay the price. And it is pricey. I don't think I'm going to pay a price for a suppressor. Because by the time it gets to the ATF, I think you guys are going to probably put in a charge for the local law to get one. And then by the time it gets all the paperwork. But, I just want to say, try and balance it out. And if the majority of the people that either email you guys are all supporters for the, give the gun owners that chance if that's what they want. Me as a police officer, I don't recall anyone being shot by a suppressor yet. Knock on wood. Has there been threat on police officers? Of course. Our island is so small. Everyone knows where we live. Just to let you guys know, drug dealers, everybody threatens to kill us. Once we kill one of their a police officer shoots and kills someone, we've been threatened by different family members, that one of us, they're going to get one of us, not the shooter that killed the person, but they're going to get one of our families, our husband, our wives, anyone. And that's what the threat that we have to go through. We've gone through it, we live with it, but you know what? That's a profession we chose, and we got to live with it. You can hear the suppressor. Criminals don't use it. They stated all the facts. So you guys make a good decision on this, and hopefully it's better for our island. I am sadly to say, from my other colleague who opposes, I'm for the Hearing Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We're now going to proceed to some questions, and I'll go ahead and begin with our bill's author, Senator Parkinson. Do you have any questions for the panel?
No, I don't. Just thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspective and your advocacy today.
Thank you so much. Also, I'll go to our committee first. I'll start with our Vice Speaker, Tony Ada. Do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you. Probably not. Maybe comments, Mr. Ulloa. I did attend the 6-hour firing range in the East Coast, and they did a demonstration for us with and without suppressors. And I think that, it's actually something that was a true experience, because a suppressor is not a silencer. The decibels were still high. We still had to wear hearing protection along with the suppressor on the firearm. So I think the notion of suppressors are silencers is all theatrical and all in the movies. And throughout, have you, your years of experience in training, and perhaps maybe Mr. Lai here, you guys will be able to tell me, have you actually fired a firearm with a suppressor on and had that experience as well?
Not locally. Off island, yes, but not not locally.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not legal here.
So it's definitely not silent, and especially with a lot of the the decibel reductions, you're still going to get the you'll still get the the crack, the crack of the projectile as it's leaving the barrel. You'll still get report of the explosion of the the gunpowder in the casing and all that. But yes, it's definitely not silent. I mean, you could probably reduce the initial sound, but then we're talking about a sound that can be heard 3 villages away, 4 villages away. I'm on my local neighborhood watch, especially New Year's. Neighborhood watch chats flooded with gunshots, but, those gunshots are coming from Mongmong, and yeah, and I'm all the way in Sirahania, so, that's how many villages away, and, that's the kind of sound levels that they're looking to reduce.
Yeah. So, and I know there's a lot of under federal law, and this is what it is, right? It's under federal law, purchasers of suppressors must go through the same procedures as those required for the purchase of an ordinary firearm and several more. Therefore, those with felony criminal records, history of mental illness, or a history of alcohol and substance abuse will be unable to secure the clearance for the purchase of these devices. And then it goes on to say suppressors are regulated under the NFA Act of 1934, which falls under the purview of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. To legally purchase or possess a firearm suppressor, you must be 21 years of age to purchase from a dealer. You must be 18 years of age to purchase a suppressor from an individual on a Form 4 to Form 4, correct? And you must be 18 years of age to possess a suppressor as a beneficiary or a trust or as a member of a corporation. You must be a United States citizen. You must be legally eligible to purchase a firearm. You must pass the ATF's background check, which takes a typical process of 8 to 10 months. You must pay the one-time transfer tax, and you must reside in one of the 42 states that currently allow the ownership of suppressors. So do you recommend, since there is a one-time transfer tax, that maybe the local GPD, should these things be registered or even taxed locally as well? I mean,
Maybe not taxed, but we definitely have to register it. You know, I know every suppressor must have a serial number, just like every firearm, and that gets registered with GPD as, you know, and I know GPD keeps a record of chain of ownership. So even on your firearms ID card, I believe it has the previous owner's name, you know, on the ownership card.
so then the other question is, a suppressor that fits a 9mm, can it fit any other firearm as well? Are they specific to a particular firearm?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Like it's a 9mm regulated suppressor is probably not going to fit on maybe like a 357. You know.
Senator, it depends on adapters or what type of thread you put on the suppressors. So for a 9mm suppressor, yes, you can, because the caliber is much bigger, so the port is much bigger, so you can put it on a smaller caliber. However, it is not as effective as this. The suppressor's ability is to contain those energy and slowly release them. So in that case, if the port is much bigger, the energy will release much faster, hence reduce the effectiveness of the suppressor.
Okay. Mr. Amuan?
Yes, in regards to that, I think Guam also need to register the suppressor if you guys decide to pass it. Same thing with how we apply for firearms ID, right? The concealed firearms ID. It asks you exactly what firearms you're going to be using in regards to the concealed firearms. So I think for the sake of Guam Police Department, okay, we also need to have some form of tracking, because for the firearms, every time that we handle a case, we submit an ATF tracing form to ATF to track this firearms, just in case it's been used someplace else, like off island. So to make it easier for GPD, if you all decide to pass it with a $1 million payment to the family members to get killed by the suppressors, I think something has to be placed in the law that it has to be registered with GPD, a certain amount, right? Because they're going to have to create some kind of a form, some kind of a data or something, and it will also help the police services fund for GPD, thus help Guam Police Department with their shortfalls with the budget, purchase vehicles, trainings, and all that.
Thank you, Mr. Amuan. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any other questions.
On interchangeability with other firearms, if it's designed for a Glock 9mm, yes, you can use it in another Glock 9mm, but you can't use it for a 22 or a 30-30 or a 5.56. They're not interchangeable. And most of these suppressors are specifically designed for the type of rounds, okay, and the firearm.
All right, thank
and
you,
not
sir.
all firearms have threaded barrels. They do not. So If you own 10 firearms and you got one with a threaded barrel, you only can buy one suppressor. You know.
Okay,
but I do
you.
agree with these gentlemen here that it should be treated like just a regular firearm, that we have to register the firearms to the GPD over at the Hickenbottom building. That will have accountability. Should it get lost, should it get stolen or whatever, then it can be traced back to what happened and everything. Yes, we do have one of the strictest gun laws, but I was talking to Senator Parkinson about that, and we're gonna disagree. I like the fact that you have to have a firearms permit, okay? That weeds out all your riffraffs and all these criminal-minded people. Good guys get to own a gun, okay? And so should suppressors. The good guys should be able to own a suppressor. And we did have that argument.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Duenas, do you have any questions for the panel? I think, do you have questions for those that are online?
Yes, just want to say, Mr. Chair, and if those who are here for their live testimony as well want to answer this question, but I'd like to ask also of Mr. Williams and Mr. Mellenbacher, in the U.S. jurisdictions, the states, and those that are of course, have the legal capability of having the suppressor, isn't it common that if an individual has criminal intent or is a criminal and is going to commit an act where they're trying to suppress, the noise of a firearm, wouldn't they typically, since they're a criminal, want to use a crude device of some sort? Meaning that if somebody really wants to commit a crime and they're trying to suppress sound, they'll figure out a way to do it. I've heard of bottles and different kind of attachments that are put on firearms to do this. Could you share your experience in that?
So Mr. Williams or Dr. Mellenbacher, are you able to respond?
To answer that question, it's a bit nuanced. So suppressors, first and foremost, you can call them a suppressor, silencer, whatever you like. Nothing silences the noise of a gunshot. It is possible to reduce the noise through rudimentary methods, but it's, again, going to be incredibly loud. Using the suppressors in the commission of a crime does carry stiff federal penalties that would still apply even if Guam were to legalize the use of suppressors on the island. So it's one of those things where criminals often don't use them because A, they're not as effective as they're portrayed to be in Hollywood, and B, it also adds length and weight to the host firearm. When criminals are using guns, they're oftentimes trying to use something that's the most concealable, and this really just hinders your ability to conceal it. I think one thing that's important to reference as well, the former number 2 in charge of ATF, a gentleman by the name of Ronald Turk, the Associate Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer for ATF at one time, put out a white paper, and in that white paper he said, and I quote, "Silencers are very rarely used in criminal shootings. Given the lack of criminality associated with silencers, it is reasonable to conclude that they should not be viewed as a threat to public safety." Bear in mind, that was issued in 2017 when there were around 1 to 1.5 million suppressors in circulation. This year, as of January of 2025, there are 4.4 million suppressors in lawfully obtained civilian hands within the United States. And we know that directly from the ATF. We had a sit-down meeting with them in January, and they gave us that exact figure. So I know that it is up to date. I know that it is accurate. Again, criminals just don't use suppressors with any sort of frequency that outweighs the public health benefit of allowing law-abiding citizens to protect their hearing with these tools.
And Doc, can you comment on that?
I probably can't comment more on the criminal statistics. My expertise is on the hearing part of suppressors, but I can just echo what Knox has said. Is I believe the crime statistics are very low, almost non-existent as far as the use of suppressors. And the one thing that one of the other people that was making a comment said is, suppressors are on the end of a firearm. They reduce the blast from the muzzle, but you still have the projectile breaking the sound barrier, which makes a noise, and you also have the sound coming out of the receiver or the other parts of the firearm. So you're not completely silencing it.
Thank you. And any other panel members?
Oh, yes, I'll address your comment about crude devices being used in lieu of a legal suppressor. So I'll speak on reality, okay? There's a lot on island, possibly. Wish.com, Temu, eBay, various websites, they sell pieces, that any criminal can order over the mail. It's not a problem. And those are not going to be tracked. It's not going to be registered, and that's a reality. Then as far as like interchangeability, like some of the other guys testified earlier, like a 9mm can work on a 22, but it's not going to fit on like larger calibers. But it's interchangeability is, it's also, that goes pretty much hand in hand with a lot of firearms. Like any Glock, AR-15 or whatnot, you can change the upper receiver off of the lower receiver, like change it to a different caliber and whatnot. Only the lower receiver has to be registered. You can take a 9mm Glock, change it to a 22 and whatnot, and but yeah, there is a level of interchangeability, but the bottom line, it must be registered. And also to address some of Mr. Amagwin's concerns about law enforcement safety. There's always going to be concern of what criminals want to do, but as far as law enforcement safety is concerned, I personally see a bigger threat to law enforcement officials as far as like they're making arrests and whatnot, like hand-to-hand combat. Right now there are probably several thousand of people training jiu-jitsu, MMA, and whatnot across the island. That is a by far bigger threat to any law enforcement officer engaging in in an arrest or trying to apprehend somebody. You don't know what the other guy knows. A lot of these guys, I've seen them, just learn stuff off of YouTube and whatnot. And yes, granted, there are a lot of law enforcement officers that they do train. I myself, I've always told all the law enforcement guys, you guys need any training whatsoever, I'll do it for free. But just that aspect alone, that's by far a bigger threat to law enforcement safety than a suppressor. And what everybody's asking for is just something that's going to be legally registered with the Guam Police Department, with the serial number, with an ownership card that can be tracked. And I'll keep up with the news when I see something with like a firearm, I'm not too sure in the exact stats, but in almost all the cases I see, firearms that are used, for illegal intent are always either stolen or, serial numbers gone. So, like I said earlier, if criminals really wanted to fabricate something crude out of, water bottle, whatever it's going to be, there are so many options online that that they can access. That's not going to be, in any law enforcement system. It's just something they pick up at the post office and take home.
Yeah, oh, good.
Okay, as far as the suppressors, right, most of the firearms sold on Guam, the barrels are not threatened. Now they're just recently posting if, as an option, you can have barrels, and you can special order barrels, and every suppressor has a specific caliber. I watch Outdoor Channel, which on Guam, it's always on Thursday. And I also subscribe to the American Rifleman, which the suppressors are made for a specific caliber. It's not interchangeable, so I'm not saying, here, you can use my suppressor. No, you better have the right caliber, the right barrel for that, the right, like one's mentioned, the right threading on it in order for it to work. So, and yes, he mentioned that the suppressors, there's a lot of gimmicks out there they can use. And another thing is oil filter. There's plenty of oil filters on Guam. You can use oil filter to suppress a firearm or suppress the sound. It won't make it silent, but there's a lot of ways. The water bottle gimmick, like it was online way back then. They used to sell the adapter, and these are non-firearm companies that are selling these things, not the NRA, not the, NRA goes by the laws of the ATS, which is there is people who make suppressors for a specific caliber, and you cannot interchange it. And yes, they're all serialized. And just like Guam is very good. It's well documented through GPD. And, if that answers any of your questions, Mr.
I'm a life member of the NRA. I'm a concealed weapons holder. I have been ever since the law was enacted here, and I was in Washington State for 20 years where I had an FFL license back in the 80s and 90s. Interchangeability, people think you just have a gun, you can throw a suppressor on it. No, barrels have to be specifically threaded. You have to buy a weapon with a threaded barrel. Then you have to buy the specific suppressor that fits that threaded barrel. Okay, now we have to talk about suppression of our Second Amendment rights. Okay, one, we are the most regulated here on Guam. In Washington State, you could buy a weapon go to a gun store and walk right out with it. A pistol, you had a 3-day waiting list. Used weapon, no traceability at all, okay? Here we do. If I now, as a concealed weapons weapon, want to have my suppressor, I have to again go through another whole, ATF investigation. That's one layer after another layer, after another layer, after another layer of my life has been regulated, and I can say it has been fairly treated under the Second Amendment. I have rights, right? As a man, I've proven my responsibility. We all have proven our responsibility with weapons. Law-abiding citizens do not commit crimes. We're being told here that you want to pass a law to jeopardize law-abiding citizens. You're not doing anything to hurt a criminal. Criminal's going to go and steal his weapon, right? You should be supporting the citizens, the law-abiding citizens of this island, and give them the right to have something as a safety issue for them, a health issue for them. And it could be in some way maybe an income for Guam on top of the 200% tax. That's a one-time tax for each suppressor. Now, if I'm allowed, I'll buy a few suppressors. And I have the proper weapons and proper licenses, and everything's been regulated. I know the people at the Armory personally. I've known them for years. Everything I have is legal. If I have a legal weapon with a legal suppressor-capable barrel, I'll buy a legal suppressor, and I'll use it legally. So please, please pass this law. It's only for the good of the people, not the good of the criminal. Everything that's been done against gun owners is pro-criminal. It just makes it easier for them, right? We are taxed. It costs me $85 for every weapon I own, and I'm a collector, okay? And that's on top of my licenses and my concealed weapons license. Everything, it just piles on and on and on. And I'm getting tired of all of us law-abiding citizens want you to support us. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm at an age right now that I have 1 foot on the platform and 1 foot in the grave. I spent a considerable time in the U.S. Army, in Army Aviation, and I've shot a lot of weapons, from 38s, 45s, 9 mils, M16A1, A2, the law, SAW, and everything. As I mentioned, I'm close to my sunset. My sunrise is gone. However, my son was also an avid Second Amendment supporter. He's young. He went to all the classes. He is an RSO. He's also will be taking classes as an NRA instructor. So he's very much into certified. I'm sorry, certified. And he's got a lot of years ahead of him. This suppressor will help him and all those younger than us that will want to one day own a firearm for hunting or recreational use. This will benefit them. It will benefit me for a little while, and I'd appreciate it that I could use it. Never used one. I'd like to. Okay? So passing this would benefit future gun enthusiasts and hunters. Thank you.
So I was a co-sponsor and voted for Senator Tony Ada's bill, so that's my history. And I know that I'm looking at a bunch of good fellas here. And I know in my closing that, in my opinion, the only individuals who use firearms, whatever, whether they have a suppressor or not, to commit a crime are bad guys, bad people, and criminals. So I want to help the good guys. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Therese Chalahi, you have questions for the panel?
Yes. Cesar Masi, thank you to the panel for your testimony today. So the author calls this bill the Hearing Protection Act of 2025. The bill would remove from our current statutes the prohibition of, quote, mufflers, silencers, or devices for deadening the sound of discharged firearms. That would be stricken from our current laws. This bill was, a very similar bill was discussed back in 2021, and the hearing was held in April, and in November 2021, the headlines on the newspaper were, a Hoggett Elementary School faces lockdown for third time in the month. And the articles talked about how Marshall A. Sablan Elementary School was locked down as a precautionary measure after employees said they heard the sound of gunshots in the area. That was November 2021 after the hearing in April. And then the bill was deliberated by the legislature in December 2021, and it passed by a vote of 7 because there were several people absent that day. But the governor vetoed it. And in the governor's vetoed message, she said, I have considered the factors and supporting information proffered in the bill to determine whether the benefit to removing restrictions on suppressor ownership outweigh the associated risks, and I find that it does not. The very reason proponents of the bill advocate for lifting of the restrictions is the reason the restriction must remain in place. While they do not eliminate it, suppressors and silencers by design substantially suppress the sound of gunfire, which is one of the most easily recognizable warnings that a gun has been fired in a person's vicinity, lawfully or unlawfully, and enables that person to get to safety. The non-lethal auditory safety concerns for hobbyists and hunters may be mitigated by the proper use of protective items such as earplugs and earmuffs, but the safety concerns for the wider population associated with the broad availability of suppressors include potentially lethal consequences and simply cannot be mitigated. The existence of federal regulations affecting the purchase does not alleviate this concern. She also says in the end that on the balance, we must continue to prioritize the community's safety from potentially life-threatening harm over the auditory safety of the few. For this reason, I veto the bill and urge our hobbyists and hunting communities to exercise appropriate safety measures to protect their hearing while shooting, including the use of safety devices intended for this purpose. Sinceramente, Lourdes Elian Guerrero, Magahagan, Guahan. That was on the previous bill. And in today's hearing, I think it's not been pointed out that we have received testimony from the Guam Police Department And contrary to what the author has said, that the bill would be regulated, the Guam Police Department, reading the same bill, has offered about 6 pages of an 8-page testimony. 6 of those pages were recommendations of how we should extend protections to Guam if we are considering a bill like this, that there are many more regulations, laws that we should put into place here on Guam. And so I am concerned because of the GPD's testimony, consistent with the last time that they testified as well, that, and you know, as Mr. Amuan says, if we are in any way increasing the threat to fellow officers, putting them at additional risk, he is pointing out that this bill, it does not limit itself to just those people who are in training. It doesn't limit itself just to police officers. It doesn't allow suppressors only for those in the military or at firing ranges or to legal hunters. And it allows it for everybody without the protections that many of the other states have also incorporated. So some of these other states that you have cited also have different regulations as well to when they bring them into the states. But so I don't know. I'm just there are articles, of course, that talk about. Of course, you want to protect hearing, and I support protection of hearing, but I also support protection of the children in the schools, immediate response by our public safety officers, immediate response by medics because they've heard the shots or people heard the shots and they can call 911, and that, yeah, so I am going to very much consider your testimony, and my time is up, so Sidus Mas.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Barnett, do you have any questions for the panel?
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to kind of, the Chief of Police, I'm surprised he didn't come out here to testify, so I thank you, Mr. Amagoan, for, I'm not saying you're representing GPD, but I think a bill like this, you would kind of expect the Chief of Police, especially since he submitted very significant testimony that actually has 8 pages of recommendations to the bill. And, you know, most of what he's recommending in here, you guys have also recommended relative to like stringent regulation, and I believe you had called for a $500 registration fee for the suppressors. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's just difficult to start the hearing with, you know, lobbyists who aren't even registered lobbyists, and to really strip away all of the sides of the issue to kind of just get to the facts. And I support Chief Ignacio's testimony, even though he wasn't here to deliver it in person. And I think I'm just worried because I've seen you know, government officials provide testimony about strengthening measures before the legislature, but then I've also seen sometimes an eagerness from my colleagues to just ram through bills with little to no safeguards. I mean, we saw it a lot in the 37th Guam legislature, so I just pray that the committee incorporates these very reasonable suggestions by the Chief of Police. And then I also just wanted to, and this is, you know, not coming down to one side or the other, but just factually to state that silencers have been, or suppressors have been used in crimes, very, you know, heinous and significant crimes. Mass shooting at Virginia Beach Municipal Center, white supremacist plots to attack black churches and synagogues, workplace shootings in Ohio, serial killer using silencer to target victims, as well as Christopher Dorner attacks on Southern California law enforcement. All these crimes utilize the silencers as suppressors, and I think where the public, because I have heard from a lot of law enforcement who oppose the measure for, you know, very similar reasons as Mr. Amagoan, but I think that, you know, we're plagued, obviously you guys know, by rampant crime, rampant drug, unchecked crystal methamphetamine epidemic. So I think for a lot of people, weighing the risk of these criminals who, you're right, are going to get these devices probably illegally. Maybe they might break into someone who's a legal owner of one's house and then take the device. But I think that's where it gets kind of heavy for a lot of people to weigh in either on one side or the other, is because there's the the crime is absolutely crazy. And gunshots, right? I mean, you talked about hearing gunshots from all the way from Mong. We've kind of been raised to listen up for that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm kind of undecided on the bill, but I just did want to say on the record that I have been approached by a lot of law enforcement, both current and retired, who do have reservations about the measure. But, I can read the room. I think they have the votes. I think it'll pass. So, again, just ask that they incorporate a lot of these safeguards, which I think are, really reasonable. And in fact, the chief says, it's not enough to fall back on the federal statutes related to suppressors that are on the books, that we also need to put in black and white on our books these very same laws, just to ensure that, it is about the responsible gun owners, and that we really minimize the opportunity for bad actors and criminals to obtain these devices, which I think would make it very much easier for them to commit crimes and then, get away with it. Like a lot of these stories we're reading about crimes that have been committed with the suppressors, I mean, one thing they have in common is there was a delay in the reporting of the crime because people just didn't hear the gunshots. I'm not saying they're silent, but they just didn't hear the gunshots and weren't able to report the crime in a timely fashion. So I think these are reasonable concerns that I have and that people share with me. So I just want to lodge those on the record, Mr. Chair, and also pray that you incorporate again some of these amendments that Chief Ignacio has suggested.
Thank you, Senator. At this time, I'll have the author, provide his closing remarks for today. Thank you, Senator Parkinson, in advance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank everyone that came out and gave their testimony for Bill 27-38, the Hearing Protection Act of 2025, and I sincerely hope my colleagues will support this bill. At this time, I'd like to speak to, some of the people that are skeptical about this bill. Why is this necessary? Is this a joke? When this first conversation first came up years ago, me and my brother at home, we thought this was a joke. Him and I were both big fans of the TV show Archer. Now, for those of you who have never seen the show Archer, it's kind of a riff on James Bond, hilarious riff on James Bond, and they shoot guns all the time. And one of the running jokes on that show is everybody has tinnitus from shooting guns. And, it was kind of just a funny joke throughout the show. But the show people, they actually really looked into the issue of tinnitus. And by the 10th or 11th season, they became legitimate advocates for tinnitus. It was the sort of thing where something that started off as a joke actually became a real vehicle for advocacy and public safety. And in this situation, life imitated art. Me and my brother, we heard about the first suppressor bill, and we're yelling, tinnitus, what? Tinnitus, what? But as I heard the public testimony, I realized myself that this wasn't a joke. And I'm a thorough Second Amendment advocate. And I discounted the dangers of hearing loss. And but once I heard that this was a real thing, and as I did my own research on it, I saw my own shared similar experiences with the Forest Service. Now, in the Forest Service, I did not use firearms, but I worked with equipment that was regularly over 140 decibels all the time. I came in with people at 18 years of age, had perfect hearing just the same as me. But for me, I was a safety enthusiast. They called me a safety nerd, safety Nazi, depending on who you ask on my crew. And I used all my PPE. I whirled my sleeve down, I used my gloves. And people that I worked with for 7, 8, 9 years, they lost their hearing at 26, 27 age, had to have hearing aids, while me just using little earplugs was able to save my hearing. And really, they didn't use their hearing protection just because of machismo. They didn't want to look not tough. But with firearms, one of the most important things you have to do is you have to train and practice with your firearm and your equipment. Training requires repetition. Repetition means repeated exposure to high decibel noises. Suppressors reduce that exposure. And why do people need to practice? They need to practice for their own personal self-defense. Among my own personal circle of friends, I know that many vulnerable people use this to protect themselves. You know, it's not just a Republican thing. I know plenty of Democrats who need personal protection. One of the first people I knew who, in college, who I helped them get a gun, was a friend who was physically assaulted because of his sexual orientation. And that was absolutely wrong. And this person recognized that they needed the ability to protect themselves. But this person had never used a gun their whole life. And he needed to practice quickly, practice soon, to get up to speed. And that repeated exposure put him at risk. I know a wife and a single mother who, leaving a domestic abuse situation, took up firearms to protect themselves. That too requires practice and repetition. And that practice and repetition to ensure that you have effective training in exercising your Second Amendment rights shouldn't lead to you losing other senses. There should not be opportunity costs that you have to weigh out to defend yourself. So I have fully come on that this legislation is not a joke. It's important. It's important not just for our individuals, it's important for our community. We had a shooting range that was shut down because of noise complaints. These people were done very, very wrong because of the negative interactions between the community and legitimate places to have firearm practice. This law, if it had passed years ago, could have prevented the shutdown of that firearm training area. And so it's not just about the individuals anymore, it's about being good neighbors in our community. So I ask my colleagues and the community to please support the Hearing Protection Act of 2025. Let's make sure that people do not have to compromise their hearing, do not have to compromise their community relationship, just so that they can practice their God-given right to protect themselves. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. And for the record, I'd like to acknowledge the committee received testimony from the Bureau of Budget Management Research relative to Bill 27-38 regarding the amendments to the Act that are primarily administrative in nature and will not fiscally impact the appropriations for FY 2025. The committee also received testimony from, if I can, the American Suppressor Association, who wrote that they're fully in support of the bill. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Academy of Doctors of Audiology, their president and their executive director, also submitted testimony to the committee relative to this bill. And as mentioned by Senator Terlahi, that the Guam Police Department did provide written testimony today. Their chief gave regrets earlier this morning to my committee that he would not be able to attend, but did provide the written testimony on Bill 27-38. And again, we want to thank all of them and all of you. To our two that are on the Zoom call still, thank you for being with us so late at night, and all of you that are here that testified for this bill. Again, the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard appreciates the attendance and participation of all senators and all of you, the community stakeholders, in this public hearing on Bill 27-38. The committee will review the information received during this hearing and will communicate with relevant government and non-government entities if necessary. The committee has tentatively scheduled a markup on Bill 27-38 COR on Wednesday, March 5th at 10 a.m. at my legislative office that's located at 120 Father Duenas Avenue, Capitol Plaza, Suite 103, Higganyo. And also committee members and the primary author of Bill 27-38, they're invited to participate in this markup. The committee will also continue to accept written testimonies on Bill 27-38 prior to that markup. Testimonies may be submitted via email to office.senatorshawn@guamlegislature.gov. That's SHAWN, just in case you don't know, through the legislative mailroom here at the Guam Congress Building, or they may be delivered directly to my senatorial office in Hickenbottom. With that, this public hearing by the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard on Bill 27-38 COR is hereby adjourned. The time is now 12:12 p.m. Have a great day, everyone.